What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back for my other review for the weekend, and the second of two reviews I'm doing for the label Dying Victims Productions. Yesterday I did Vicious Nights, and now I'm here to talk about the other one that came out this past weekend on Dying Victims Productions, and it's a completely different one. Whereas Vicious Nights, that was a death thrash album. Here we're going to be talking about classic metal, and we're talking about another debut from German heavy metal band Tension and their album Decay. So, Tension, they are a German heavy metal band that formed back in around 2015, 2016, that time frame, and they had one EP out in 2017, and haven't put out anything since until now, and this is their first full-length album, their debut album, Decay. So, what does this band sound like? Well, let's get into the review. So we kick things off with the longest track of the album, a little over 6 minutes, Open the Gates. After some ambience in the background, we get straight into some classic metal riffing that reminds me a little bit of Judas Priest, and I'm talking like early 80s Judas Priest, like British Steel, Screaming for Vengeance, Defenders of the Faith, that type of style. And after a great melodic chorus, we get into some Iron Maiden-inspired gallops going on, as well as a memorable melodic riff. And I love the shift that's going on between like the Priest riffing and the Maiden melodies and the gallops going on. Some great guitar harmonies going on into leads into the lead section, which has a lot of Iron Maiden influence going on. So already off to a strong start. Then we get into Higher Power, starting things off on a more speedy note with the tempo and the riffs. This time, it kind of sounds like a mix of early Accept and a little bit of the Iron Maiden song Aces High. Like the beat and the tempo is very similar to Aces High, but some of the riffing that's going on kind of reminds me a little bit of early Accept, like Restless and Wild and I'm a Rebel. Also, I love these melodic riffs that are going on that we get throughout the track. And then another great lead. This time, a little more technical execution going on with the lead and more amazing guitar harmonies. Really all throughout the album, you get great guitar harmonies all throughout. Kind of reminds you a little bit of the new wave of British heavy metal scene a little bit. Hellflight, now this one is a bit of a strange one. Starts off with more of that Judas Priest style riffing, but this time it's a little more 70s Judas Priest, like Sin After Sin, Stained Class, that era, more than anything else. Songs and blah blah blah. The song then kind of speeds up a little bit into more speed metal territory that reminds me a little bit of Halloween, like Walls of Jericho era Halloween. And the vocals on this track definitely feel very 80s. Almost like a flock of seagulls a little bit, which is why... And also there wasn't a lead section on this track, which this one was definitely not a favorite of mine on the album, just because the vocals, to me, felt a little too close to like a flock of seagulls, and there was no solo. So it kind of took me out of the album a little bit, but thankfully we get right back into some really cool stuff with Cosmic Gaze. And I love how this riff that begins this track reminds me of like what would be like a faster Blue Oyster Cult track. Quick lead along with the riff before the vocals kick in. Again, more great guitar harmonies happening that leads into a heavy riff followed by the chorus. And the lead that shows up to set up the second chorus, it was quick, but it was very tasty in its own right. And the drum fill at the end, like the drum work, not just on this track, but throughout the whole album, was really, really cool. And I love the drum fill right at the very end of the track. Age of the Stars. This one is a unique one in its own right. Starts off with a beautiful bass line that definitely made me think of Steve Harris of Iron Maiden. But as that bass line's going, you get some clean guitars following along that kind of remind me of like a softer Opeth part, which is very interesting to hear. But then right after that wonderful beginning, we get into some heavy and fast moments that get right into that speed metal, early Halloween style once again. And it goes back and forth between being fast and speedy and into a great Maiden-influenced gallop once again. But there's some haunting guitar melodies going on in the background of this track from time to time. Another great harmonic riff. And then another technical lead that this time kind of showcasing a little bit of a neoclassical influence. That's just kind of what I picked up on. But then we get into track number 6 with Black Knights. More classic riffing going on to get things started. Even a quick lead pops in at the very beginning. And this track has a lot of moments that reminds me of Angel Witch. Even the vocals on this track kind of have a bit of an Angel Witch vibe to it. Another quick lead at the end to kind of... And this was a bit of a darker lead than the other tracks on the album to kind of bring in a sense of dread to bring this song to a close. And again, the song Black Knights, all about the Black Knights and stuff like that, of like the medieval times and such, so it kind of gave it a bit of a darker edge to it. But then we get into track 7 with Moon Crushers, heavy yet melodic riff at the beginning that instantly sets the pace for the song. More Judas Priest influence shining through on the riffs. The first lead had a bit of a somber feel, and then the second lead that shows up was quick and to the point. Suddenly the riffs and the mood changes slightly to feel more somber, to then lead into the third and final lead that carries that feeling even more. The penultimate track, track 8, Mistress, starting off with a creepy riff to set a more sinister mood at the beginning. More of that Angel Witch influence shining in through the riffs and the vocals. The guitar melodies and the bass in the middle really work hand in hand together very, very well to kind of set a bit of a dark atmosphere to lead into probably the most shreddy inspired lead of the entire album, as the guitars are just going nuts. Even a quick blast beat at the end, which was completely unexpected. And then we get to the closing track, Earth Crisis. Not named after the metalcore band Earth Crisis, but starting off with some war ambience, and we hear a faint guitar in the background to provide a somber feel at the beginning, before we get a wonderful melodic guitar line as the song kind of starts off a little bit on the slower side, not really like doom, but just slower, and then immediately afterwards, back into more speed metal. This time, more inspired by the band Tank than anything else, and it goes into more of that galloping riff, more galloping riffs and beats like Iron Maiden again, and this track goes back and forth between sounding almost like Iron Maiden and sounding like Tank, and I loved it for that reason. And then towards the end, more great guitar harmonies to bring things to a close. So overall, another classic sounding metal album right here. Like, I just recently talked about the band Eliminator and how that was basically like a new Iron Maiden type of style going on. Here, it's like, it's kind of all over the place. You get some Judas Priest influence, some Iron Maiden, some Accept, some early Halloween, some Angel Witch, Blue Oyster Cult, Tank. It kind of goes all over the place in between that like late 70s, early 80s period of classic metal, so to speak, particularly the new wave of British heavy metal stuff, and a little bit of speed metal around that time too. And there are a lot of great moments on this album that I really, really enjoyed. Like, those harmonies were so well crafted. Most of the lead work was great. My main complaint here is that it does, kind of like what I was talking about with Abyssus last week. It does feel a little derivative of a lot of those bands I brought up, but I like all those bands, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. But again, kind of like what I brought up with Abyssus, it's like it's rubbing that line of being inspired and then just straight up copying. It's just like rubbing that line. It's not crossing it. It just plays to its influences, maybe a little too closely. But then again, this is a debut, so I'll cut them a break on that. Because after all, it ain't no sin for a band to be derivative, especially in their early stages of their career. Who knows, maybe for their second album, they'll just completely transform their sound and really, really kind of embrace themselves a little bit more. But overall, this was still a really good debut. I enjoyed it top to bottom for the most part. I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. It's a solid album, to say the very least. Not the strongest classic sounding metal album so far. To me, that title goes to Eliminator so far. But this, for a debut, really good job. I'm definitely looking forward to what these guys have in store for their second album. And who knows? Maybe they'll change styles and go somewhere completely different, or they can fix some of the minor issues that I had on this album and apply those fixes to the second album, and it'll probably blow this one out of the water. But what did you guys think of Decay by Tension, for those who have heard it? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, horns high, and I will see you soon. Wake up.
This is interesting.
And
wow.
I can go ahead and confirm.
I was the revealer. I flipped Levi's card. There's my revealer card.
I was hoping this would happen. Okay.
The heck happened?
Alright.
What in the
world? God.
Misappropriated.
Okay, I was the robber, and I took Seth's revealer.
What the heck?
So Seth and I are safe. Bad news for everyone else.
And I'm a prince again,
I literally was squinting because I'm like, that looks like a revealer card, but wait, I'm the revealer.